I think we've all gone through some element of change in the last 12 months. Not due to anything within our control, something that's come from completely outside. And I think we've all kind of evaluated what we do in our businesses and indeed in our kind of personal lives. And we've all kind of had to adjust in some kind of way. I know I've certainly introduced sort of products and services that I wasn't planning on introducing until much later in my business life. And I've done various kind of little projects that where I've had to really change what I'm doing. And whenever we do any kind of change like this, whatever it is, there's always a list of things to do. And this is going back to what we were talking about earlier on with moving houses and such like. And actually, the narration I was going to do, so I've suddenly switched this morning because I thought actually it's quite relevant to what some of you have experienced in the last sort of few months when you kind of moved house. And I remember a number of years ago, my uncle decided to build his own house, and he bought this little plot of land, and he got a builder in to put this house together for him. And it took ages, I mean, years and years and years before he actually moved in. Now, what he was doing, I'm going to just flick to the next slide if I can. What he was doing was this thing on the left-hand side here. Now, okay, it's a chat about change and about projects, yeah, so it's going to have triangles in it, right? So forgive me for using them, but on the left here, what he was doing was this features bubble at the top. He was waiting until it had all been finished before he moved in. Yeah, he was waiting until every single room had been finished and decorated and furnished before he actually decided to move into the house. Consequently, he moved in about 2 years after he initially thought he was going to move in, and the budget was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And actually the quality of what he was getting put into the house, also some of that changed a bit, because that was kind of like back then, that was almost like the thinking about what we need to do with change. We don't deliver it until we've got absolutely everything. But then we don't need everything, do we? Some of us have got boxes in the garage from 20 years ago. I've got boxes in my garage from 5 years ago when I moved in here. Yeah, there's a recognition that actually we don't need everything in whatever new product or service we are delivering. Some of it is really important, and as long as we do that, then we can actually start doing what we're doing. So, we can set a time frame and say, right, okay, we're going to finish this by, I don't know, the end of May or whatever. And I can deliver it at the end of May, but I'm not going to deliver everything that's on that list. And just recently, again, it's a house move kind of thing. We have a friend in Germany who has just recently been allocated a project with his company. And the project is taking place a few hundred miles away from where he actually lives. And it's going to take about 3 years to go through this project. And he didn't fancy living in a hotel for 3 years during the week and then going home at weekends. So he decided that he was going to buy himself a little house around where this work is kind of going on. And he's a bit of a DIY enthusiast. So instead of buying a house that's completely finished with all the features done, he's decided to buy what estate agents call a doer-upper. So what he's done is he's looked for a house that has at least one livable room in it. And as long as it's got the kind of, it's got plumbing, it's got heating, it's got somewhere to cook food, and he's got somewhere to sleep. And essentially that was what he was looking for. And he's moved into this place, and he's gradually kind of refurbishing it room by room. So, as he's gone through the last couple of months, I think he's finished the lounge at the moment for some weird reason, because he's still sleeping in the kitchen. Well, hey, somewhere to sleep. And he reckons it's going to, he sets kind of targets for each room. So he reckons by the end of the year, it should be a completely finished item. But when he comes to the end of the lounge, he gets in the important stuff in and then moves to the next room and then comes back to the rest later. Yeah. Now it's a technique that I've been using on projects for many, many years. And it's the reasons why the Russians are coming, because it's called Moscow. And it's where we look at the requirements that we need to do any particular piece of work, where, whatever change it is, whatever we're doing. And we can prioritize these requirements in different groups. So some of these things are absolute must-haves. They're the absolute minimums. Like I say, my friend in his house in Germany, he's got somewhere to cook, he's got somewhere to sleep, he's got plumbing, he's got water, and he's got electricity. And he's living in the kitchen, but he's living in the house. Yeah, that's his minimum requirements. And there is an expression going around called the minimum viable product is what they call it. What's the absolute essentials for this to actually work? And then you have like a set of what an owner should have criteria, which are the really important things. Well, it'd be really great to have a telly, but if the telly's not there, I can still sleep in the kitchen. It's still a perfectly serviceable, habitable area. But it'd be really great to have a TV, because otherwise, I get really bored very quick. So there's a section of criteria we can define as well. These are really important. I could do without them, but it will make my life more difficult. And when I've relate this to, last year when I switched all of my training to be online, there were a number of different platforms that I was looking at to deliver my training on. There's 4 kind of main ones I'd actually selected. One of my must-have criteria in the selection was that I had to have breakout room facility. So when I send people out on exercises as part of the course, I can allocate them into a breakout room. They can have a little bit of a discussion, and I can kind of hop around them all. It's a really essential part of what I deliver as part of the training. So the platforms I was looking at had to have that breakout facility. Now I actually broke that down a little bit, because all 4 of them had the facility to do breakout rooms. However, they did it differently. Some of the platforms did it really easily. It's just a click of a button and the platform automatically allocates people into the rooms, which is great for like random assignments. Other platforms required you to have a Google Doc of a spreadsheet that you then had to link to the platform. And if you wanted to change the membership of the groups, it wasn't just a click of a button. It was like playing around with all this other stuff. And I was thinking, no, that's not what I want. As a should have criteria, I wanted it to be easy to use. Now, if that platform was the only one available, I'd have to put up with it. Yeah. But it was something that I defined to say, well, actually, that's a really important thing. But if I don't have it, I can still do the training online. It's just a bit more difficult. Yeah, the workaround was a bit more fiddly. The last bit is could have. Yeah, one of the nice to haves. These are the boxes that you've got in the garage for the last 10 years and haven't unboxed yet. Because what you've got in there is all the stuff that's really nice to have. I'd love to be able to put it somewhere. But, hey, if it stays in the garage for the next 10 years, then fine. I can pass it on to my children. They can unbox it. So there's a set of criteria that we kind of often refer to as the nice to haves, the bells, the whistles. I could not deliver these, and I wouldn't really notice that much. Okay, it has an impact, but It's something that we can deal with fairly easily. I've got this thing in my car where I can set the temperature at a different level on the passenger side to the driver's side. I think that's a nice to have. A friend of mine says it's saving his marriage. So it doesn't matter what the criteria is. These are different for different people. Yeah, some people would say, yeah, I mean, I personally didn't buy a car because it didn't have a jack plug to put my iPod in. Yeah, that was a must-have criteria for me at that time. Whereas for others, well, that's a could have, isn't it, mate? So it's important whenever we do this, if we're involving other people in the change or the work or whatever we're doing, that we take everybody's ideas into account when we kind of sort them into these different kind of areas. But I find this technique is really useful if you are doing any kind of change in your business, if you're introducing a new product or a new service. Just make sure you understand what is the absolute key to it working. Yeah, what are the absolute must-haves you've got to have as a minimum for this to work for you? Because then you can flex this, you can de-scope the shoulds and the coulds if necessary, so you still deliver something on time and you're not waiting for years on end for it all to be finished before you release it. And yeah, there you go. That's what I call or what's known as the Moscow technique, because your must, should, could, and also won't have, which I haven't really mentioned, but the won't have criteria, the kind of stuff where you identify, well, I'm not doing that. So overall in the whole thing, you say, right, I'm not going to bring this into this particular change. It won't ever happen as part of this particular piece of work. But because you can break this down on different levels, you might say, well, I won't do it this time. I won't do it in the next couple of weeks, but I might do it in the few weeks after that. Yeah, so you kind of identify it as a won't have. If you get the chance to do it in that first time frame, you might possibly bring it in. Yeah, and this is like my homework at school when I used to get set homework during the summer holidays. Yeah, we had 6 or 7 weeks of being at home, and the teachers would give you all these assignments in the last week of term that you had to have finished by the first week going back in September. Otherwise, you'd end up in detention. Yeah, so they were must-have deliverables. But there was no way I was doing that homework in week 1 of the summer holiday. It was probably getting done in the last week, even though it was a absolute essential. Yeah, but it was always on the list. Yeah, so won't have this week, but yeah, I'm going to go to the pictures this week, or I might go stay with my mate next week, or that kind of thing. But it has to be done by the end of the piece of work. So we can also specify the won'ts. So the must, the shoulds, the coulds, the won'ts makes up Moscow, means the Russians are coming, but can certainly help when you're implementing any change into your business.
That's really good. Can you share that screen?
Can I share the screen?
Yeah, that slide. Would you be able to?
I can.
Thank you.
In fact, I can share the whole presentation because
that would be wonderful.
Because I have skipped one.
Right, okay.
Because I'm rapidly running out of time.
You are.
But yeah, there is another slide, which is this one, which I'll share as well, which
that'd be fantastic.
Gives you an idea of how much effort you should put it. Because with the must-haves, people say, well, everything's a must-have, isn't it? Well, no, not really. So there's a certain amount of effort that you plan for your must-haves, which is about 60%. So it builds in kind of a 40% contingency into the work you're doing. But yeah, I can share the whole lot. So
that'd be lovely. Thank you.